Please, somebody help! He's beaten my mama! Ibrashi, the little girl's voice cracked like thunder across the parking lot. Her sneakers slapped against wet pavement as she ran, not away from danger, but toward it, toward the row of motorcycles gleaming under the streetlights, toward men in leather vests who most people crossed the street to avoid. Marcus Reaper Johnson looked up from his bike. The chrome wrench in his hand froze mid-turn. The child couldn't have been more than 7 years old, her cornrows half undone, tears streaming down her face like rivers of desperation. "My daddy's hurting her," she sobbed, grabbing onto Reaper's vest with small fists. Nobody's stopping him. Nobody ever stops him. Behind her, through the glass doors of the Southside apartment complex, shadows moved violently in a third-floor window. The sound of breaking glass carried on the Chicago wind. Reaper's jaw tightened. He looked at his brothers, 6 men who'd spent lifetimes being judged, feared, and misunderstood. Men who knew what it meant to be invisible until someone needed a villain. Which apartment? Reaper's voice was calm, steady, the kind of calm that came before earthquakes. 3 degrees Celsius, the little girl whispered. "But he's big, and mean, and nobody— Burka, we're not nobody, little sister!" Reaper stood, and the other bikers rose with him like a wall of silent thunder. "Show us." "Ibra, if you believe in second chances and the truth that lives in unexpected places, stay till the end, because what's coming will shake your soul and remind you that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear leather." The girl's name was Zuri Thompson, and she had learned at 6 years old that screaming for help was useless. Her mother's cries had echoed through their apartment building for 2 years, bouncing off walls that didn't care and past neighbors who pretended not to hear. Her father, if she could still call him that, was Marcus Thompson Sr., a man who'd once been gentle. Zuri remembered that version like a fading photograph. The man who'd held her on his shoulders at the park, who'd read her bedtime stories in funny voices. That man had drowned in bottles of bourbon and pills that came in unlabeled bags. What remained was a stranger wearing her father's face. Tonight had started like all the bad nights did, with shouting, with her mother Linda trying to keep her voice calm even as it shook, with the sound of something hitting the wall, sometimes objects, sometimes something softer that made worse sounds. Zuri had been clutching Mr. Whiskers, her stuffed cat, when she heard her mother scream. Not the usual scream, a different one that sounded like goodbye. She'd run, past the elderly couple in 3B who'd closed their door when they saw her, down the stairs where Mr. Chen had looked at her with sad eyes but kept walking, out into the parking lot where the world felt bigger and colder than ever before. That's when she'd seen them, the bikers. Her teachers had taught her about stranger danger. The kids at school said bikers were criminals. The news showed them angry, violent, dangerous. But Zuri was 7, and her mama was dying, and danger had her father's eyes. So she'd run to the only people who looked strong enough to fight monsters. Now she led them through the lobby, past the broken buzzer system, past the flickering fluorescent lights, upstairs that smelled like old cigarettes and forgotten dreams. 6 leather-clad men followed a little girl in a unicorn nightgown, and nobody who saw them would ever forget it. Reaper walked beside Zuri, his heavy boots somehow quiet on the stairs. The other bikers spread out: Tank, Diesel, Prophet, Chains, and Ghost. Men with road names that sounded like threats but hearts that still remembered how to bleed. "That one," Zuri whispered when they reached the 3rd floor. Her finger trembled as she pointed at 3 degrees Celsius. The sounds coming from inside made Reaper's blood run cold. Not the sound of a fight. The sound of one person hurting another who'd stopped fighting back. "Zuri!" Reaper knelt down, his voice gentle in a way that surprised even him. "I need you to go down to Mrs. Chen in 2A. Can you do that for me?" "Ibri, but my mama." "Ibrik, we've got your mama now." He looked into her eyes, and she saw something there that teachers and counselors and police officers had never shown her. She saw someone who believed her. "I promise you, we've got her." "Ibro." Zuri nodded and ran back toward the stairs. Reaper stood and looked at his brothers. They'd all seen this before, in their own homes, their own childhoods, their own mirrors once upon a time. They'd all made silent promises to become the men who would have saved them. Tonight was one of those promises coming due. Reaper knocked, not a polite knock, a knock that meant authority. "Marcus Thompson," his voice carried through the door like a judge's gavel. "Open this door, Now. Now, the sounds inside stopped. Footsteps approached. The door cracked open, and a man's bloodshot eyes appeared in the gap. "Who the hell are you? We're the people who heard your daughter screaming," Reaper said quietly. "And we're the people who need to see Linda. Right now!" Ebro Marcus Thompson Sr. laughed. It was an ugly sound, whiskey-soaked and mean. "Mind your business, old man. This is my house, my wife, my—" Ebro, the door flew open. Linda Thompson stood behind her husband, and every biker felt their hearts crack at the sight. She was beautiful, or had been before the bruises, before the split lip and swelling eye, before the fear had carved itself into every line of her face. She was also holding a phone. "I called 911, she whispered, her voice somehow strong despite everything. Before he took it away. "They're coming." Ebro Marcus Sr. spun around, rage flooding his features. His hand rose. Abraka and Reaper stepped inside. Reaper's hand caught Marcus Thompson Sr.'s wrist mid-swing, not violently, not with the force that rage would have given, just firm, steady, the grip of a man who'd spent decades learning the difference between strength and brutality. "That's enough," Reaper said quietly. Marcus Sr. tried to pull away, but Reaper's hold didn't budge. Behind him, the other bikers filled the doorway. Not threatening, not advancing, just present. A wall of silent judgment. "Get out of my house!" Marcus Sr.'s voice cracked with bourbon and fury. "You got no right, We have every right," Prophet spoke up. He was the oldest of the group, gray threading through his beard, eyes that had seen too much. "Your daughter gave us that right when she begged us to save her mother." Abro in the distance, sirens began to wail, growing closer. Linda Thompson had collapsed against the wall, her body shaking with sobs that sounded like they'd been held prisoner for years. Tank, the biggest of the bikers but the gentlest, slowly approached her. "Ma'am?" His voice was surprisingly soft. "Can I get you some water? Maybe a towel?" Bruce, she looked up at him through her one good eye, the other swollen shut. She nodded. Tank moved to the kitchen, his massive frame somehow careful not to take up too much space in the small apartment. He wet a clean towel and brought it back, kneeling down so he wouldn't tower over her. "My daughter," Linda whispered. "Where's Zuri?" "Hebrew is safe," Reaper answered, still holding her husband at bay. "She's with a neighbor, smart kid." "Brave kid." Too brave," Linda's voice broke. "She shouldn't have to be." Marcus Sr. had stopped struggling. The fight was draining out of him the way it always did after the rage burned through. Now he just looked pathetic. Small, a man who'd mistaken fear for respect and cruelty for control. "I didn't mean," he started. "Don't," Diesel cut him off. He was the youngest of the bikers, barely 30, but his eyes were old. "Don't you dare say you didn't mean it! We all heard what we heard! Your daughter saw what she saw! Abrahi!" The sirens grew louder. Red and blue lights began to flash through the windows, painting the walls in colors of consequence. Reaper finally released Marcus Sr.'s wrist and stepped back. The man stumbled but didn't fall, didn't run. Just stood there like he was realizing for the first time that the walls he'd built around his family were really a prison, and he'd been the warden. "When the police come," Reaper said to Linda, "you tell them everything. Everything, you understand?" She nodded, tears still streaming. "And if you don't," Ghost added quietly, "he'll do it again. They always do. Until someone makes them stop." Heavy footsteps thundered up the stairs. The police arrived like they always did. Too late to prevent, just in time to document. 2 officers appeared in the doorway, hands on their belts, taking in the scene. A beaten woman, her husband, and 6 bikers who looked like they'd ridden out of a crime drama. "Who called this in?" the first officer asked, his eyes immediately suspicious of the leather vests and tattoos. "I did." Linda's voice was stronger now. She stood, Tank offering his arm for support. "My husband beat me. These men stopped him. They saved my life." Abro, the second officer's hand moved toward his radio. "We're going to need everyone to step outside." "Abrook, officer." Prophet pulled out his phone, holding it up. "Before anyone goes anywhere, you should know we've been recording since we entered. Audio only, for everyone's protection." The officers exchanged glances. The first one's suspicious expression softened slightly. He looked at Linda's face, at the overturned furniture, at the broken picture frame on the floor showing a happier family that no longer existed. "Ma'am," he said gently, "do you want to press charges?" Linda Thompson looked at her husband. The man she'd married 8 years ago in a church filled with hope and promises. The man who'd held her hand during Zuri's birth and cried tears of joy. The man who'd slowly disappeared into addiction and anger until nothing remained but a monster wearing his wedding ring. She thought about her daughter, about the terror in Zuri's eyes every time a door slammed, about how a 7-year-old had learned to sleep in her closet on bad nights because it felt safer than her bed. She thought about the women she'd met at the hospital during previous accidents, women who'd made excuses, who'd gone home, who'd disappeared into statistics. Yes, Linda said, I want to press charges. Marcus Thompson Sr. crumpled. Not physically, he remained standing, but something inside him collapsed. Linda, please, I need help. I need... Abrike, you need to be away from us, she said quietly, before Zuri learns that this is what love looks like. The officers moved forward, reading Marcus Sr. his rights as they cuffed him. He didn't resist, just kept mumbling apologies that came 2 years and 1,000 bruises too late. As they led him out, one of the officers turned back to the bikers. We'll need statements from all of you. Of course. Reaper nodded. Whatever you need. After the police car pulled away, after the neighbors who'd pretended not to hear suddenly emerged with concerned faces and empty offers of help, after the EMTs had checked Linda's injuries and urged her to go to the hospital, the bikers remained. Chains had gone to get Zuri from Mrs. Chen's apartment. Now the little girl stood in her doorway, looking at her mother's battered face and the strangers who'd answered her prayers. Mama? Her voice was so small. Linda opened her arms, and Zuri flew into them. They held each other like drowning people clinging to driftwood, like the world was ending and beginning at the same time. Reaper watched them and remembered his own mother, the way she'd hidden bruises under long sleeves, the way she'd lied to teachers and doctors until the lies became her truth, the way she'd died when he was 15, slipping on icy stairs that his father's fist had actually pushed her down. He'd been too young to save her, but tonight, he'd been exactly the right age to save someone else's mother. Thank you, Linda whispered to the bikers, still holding her daughter. Thank you for hearing her, for believing her, for coming. Anyone would have done the same, Tank said. But they all knew that was a lie, because people had heard, people had known. People had walked past Zuri crying in hallways, past Linda covering bruises with makeup, past the sounds that should have demanded action. People had done what people always did. Nothing. Sometimes, it took monsters to stop monsters. Sometimes it took men the world had written off to show up when respectable people looked away. 3 days after that night, Marcus Reaper Johnson stood outside Lincoln Elementary School, watching the yellow buses arrive, parents clustered in groups, some glancing at him and his motorcycle with uncertainty. He was used to those looks. He was waiting for Zuri. Linda had called him the day before, her voice still carrying the weight of everything that had happened, but somehow lighter, too. She'd asked if he could pick up Zuri from school, just this once. Linda's shift at the hospital where she worked as a nurse's aide ran late on Wednesdays, and her mother, who usually helped, couldn't make it. I know it's a strange request, Linda had said, but Zuri hasn't stopped talking about you, about all of you. She feels safe with you. Reaper had said yes before he'd even thought about it. Now he watched as children poured from the building, a river of backpacks and laughter. He spotted Zuri immediately. Those cornrows were neater now, tied with purple beads that caught the afternoon light. She walked slowly, head down, separate from the other children. Then she saw him. Her face transformed. She broke into a run, her backpack bouncing wildly, and for a moment Reaper felt something he hadn't felt in 30 years. He felt like somebody's hero. Reaper. She stopped just short of crashing into him, suddenly shy. You came. Ibrahim, course I came. He knelt down to her level. Your mama asked me to. That cool with you? Ibrahim, she nodded so hard her beads clicked together. Can I ride on the motorcycle? Ibrahim with a proper helmet and your mama's permission already given? Yeah, little sister, you can ride. He pulled out a helmet, smaller than his usual gear, something he'd spent 2 hours yesterday finding at 3 different shops. He told the clerk it was for his niece. That wasn't quite true, but it wasn't quite false either. The helmet had purple accents. He'd chosen it because he remembered her beads. Zuri's eyes went wide. It matches. Abracadabra coincidence, Reaper said, though they both knew better. He helped her secure it, Showed her where to hold on, told her the rules, stay still, lean with him, trust the bike. She listened with an intensity that reminded him how seriously children took trust when adults gave them reason to. They rode through Chicago's South Side as the afternoon sun painted everything gold. Reaper kept it slow, careful, hyper-aware of his precious cargo. At stoplights, he could feel Zuri's small hands gripping his vest, could hear her delighted laughter through the helmet. When they arrived at the apartment complex, the same one from 3 nights ago, but somehow different now, Linda was already there, having caught an earlier bus. She stood in the parking lot, hands clasped together, watching her daughter experience joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy. Reaper helped Zuri off the bike and removed her helmet. The little girl was bouncing on her toes. "Mama, did you see? I was flying! We were like superheroes!" Linda laughed, and it was the first time Reaper had heard that sound from her. "It was beautiful. I saw, baby. You looked very cool." Linda's eyes met Reaper's over her daughter's head. "Thank you. For this. For everything. Just a ride home from school," he said. "We both know it's more than that." She was right. It was more. It was a little girl learning that not all powerful men were dangerous. It was a mother learning that asking for help didn't mean weakness. It was a biker learning that redemption sometimes wore cornrows and called you a superhero. "Miss Thompson," Reaper said carefully, "my brothers and I, we run a community center, auto shop mainly, teaching kids to fix bikes and cars, keeping them off streets that'll chew them up." He paused. "We also run a support group for families dealing with situations like yours." Linda's expression shifted, guarded but interested. "I'm not saying you need it," Reaper continued, "just saying it's there, first Thursday of every month. Coffee's terrible, but the people are real." "I'll think about it," Linda said softly. Zuri tugged on Reaper's vest. "Will you come back? Will I see you again?" He looked down at this child who'd been brave enough to ask strangers for help, who'd trusted her instincts when the world said to fear people like him. "Yeah, little sister, you'll see me again." That night, back at the clubhouse, a converted warehouse that smelled like motor oil and coffee, Reaper sat with his brothers. They were working on an old Harley, hands moving with practiced precision, comfortable silence between them. Prophet broke it. "You getting attached to that family?" "Brew, maybe," Reaper admitted. "That's dangerous," Diesel said, not looking up from the carburetor he was cleaning. "Getting involved in people's lives, especially kids." "We're already involved," Tank pointed out. "Been involved since that little girl grabbed Reaper's vest." Chains nodded. "She reminded me of my sister, back before everything went wrong. Brew, they all had befores. They all had reasons they'd ended up here. In this brotherhood of broken men trying to fix things, bikes, cars, sometimes lives." Ghost, who rarely spoke, finally said, "That man's gonna get out eventually. Domestic charges rarely stick long. He'll come back." The room went quiet, because Ghost was right. Marcus Thompson Sr. would post bail or plead down or serve minimal time. And then he'd come back, probably angry, definitely dangerous. "Then we make sure Linda and Zuri have a plan," Reaper said firmly. "We make sure they've got numbers to call, places to go, people who'll show up." People like us," Prophet said. "It wasn't a question. People like us," Reaper confirmed. Tank put down his wrench. "I've been thinking. My cousin runs a women's shelter across town. Real security, legal help, counseling. I could make some calls." Do it," Reaper said. Diesel pulled out his phone. "I know a lawyer, does pro bono work for domestic violence cases. Might help Linda with custody stuff, restraining orders. Call him." They worked through the night, these 6 men that society had labeled dangerous, making phone calls and connections, building a safety net for a woman and child they barely knew. Because that's what they did. That's who they'd chosen to become when the world had finished breaking them and they'd had to rebuild from scratch. Outside, Chicago slept. Inside, angels in leather vests planned for the war they knew was coming. 2 weeks passed like a held breath. Marcus Thompson Sr. posted bail. His brother put up the money, wearing the same blind loyalty that enabled monsters to keep hunting. He was released with conditions: no contact with Linda or Zuri, mandatory anger management, substance abuse evaluation. Paper promises that everyone knew were only as strong as the man who signed them. Linda moved through those weeks like a woman learning to walk again. She attended the support group at the Bikers Community Center. The first Thursday came and she almost didn't go, standing outside the converted warehouse for 10 minutes before Prophet found her there. "Coffee's really terrible," he'd said, opening the door. "But we don't lie about our damage. That's worth something." Inside, she found 12 other women. Different ages, different stories, but wearing the same invisible scars. They sat in a circle of folding chairs that didn't match, drinking coffee from chipped mugs, and told truths that the outside world didn't want to hear. A woman named Sharon spoke about rebuilding credit after her ex-husband destroyed it. Another named Keisha talked about explaining black eyes to her son in ways that didn't make him hate all men. An older woman, Miss Dorothy, shared how she'd finally left after 40 years because her granddaughter asked why Grandpa was so mean. When it was Linda's turn, she told them about Zuri running to strangers because home had become the dangerous place. "I kept thinking I could fix him," Linda said, her voice steady now in a way it hadn't been before. "That if I just loved him enough, was patient enough, he'd become the man I married again." "That man's gone," Miss Dorothy said gently. "Maybe he never existed. Maybe we love the idea more than the reality." How do you stop feeling guilty?" Linda asked. "Like I should have tried harder? Done more?" Tank, who sat quietly in the corner during these sessions, present but not intrusive, finally spoke. "My mama used to say that, up until the day my father put her in the hospital for the last time." His voice was rough with old pain. She'd tried for 15 years. It was never going to be enough. The problem wasn't her love. It was his. Bro." The women nodded. They understood. After the meeting, as Linda gathered her things, a woman approached her. She was younger, maybe mid-20s, with intelligent eyes and a professional bearing that seemed out of place in the warehouse. "Miss Thompson, I'm Jasmine Rodriguez. I'm a social worker with the Family Justice Center." She handed Linda a card. "Tank reached out to me. I'd like to help you build a safety plan, free of charge." Linda looked at the card, then at Tank, who was helping fold chairs like he wasn't orchestrating miracles. "Why?" Linda asked. "Why are all of you helping me? You don't even know me." Jasmine's expression softened. "Because somebody should have helped Tank's mother, and Prophet's sister, and Reaper's mom." She glanced at the bikers, then back at Linda. "They can't save the people they lost, but they can save you. Let them." Meanwhile, Zuri was discovering her own form of healing. Reaper had started picking her up from school twice a week. Linda's work schedule demanded it, and Zuri's grandmother could only do so much. But it had become more than logistics. It had become ritual. On Wednesdays and Fridays, Zuri would burst from Lincoln Elementary, scan the parking lot for the motorcycle, and light up like sunrise when she found it. Today, Reaper had brought Ghost with him. Ghost, who never spoke more than necessary, who carried shadows in his eyes that even his brothers didn't fully understand. "This is my brother Ghost," Reaper introduced them. "He's teaching me some new things, and I thought maybe you'd like to learn too." Zuri studied Ghost carefully. "Why don't you talk much?" Ghost crouched down to her level. When he spoke, his voice was soft. "Sometimes words aren't enough for what's inside. So I learned other ways to say things." Key. He pulled out a small sketchbook and showed her. Pages filled with drawings, motorcycles, cityscapes, faces full of emotion rendered in pencil and charcoal. Zuri's eyes went wide. "You made these?" "Hebrew art therapy," Ghost explained. "My counselor taught me. When the words get stuck, the pictures come out." He handed her a blank page and a pencil. "Want to try?" They sat on the curb outside the apartment complex. A biker covered in tattoos, a 7-year-old girl with purple beads, and a motorcycle standing guard over them both. Ghost showed Zuri how to shade, how to let her hand move without thinking too much, how to put feelings on paper instead of holding them inside where they'd turn toxic. Zuri drew her mother smiling. She drew Mr. Whiskers. She drew a motorcycle with wings. Then she drew a small figure hiding in a closet. Ghost went very still. "That you?" She nodded, not looking up. "You hide a lot?" "Hebrew used to, when Daddy got loud. The closet was safe." Ghost was quiet for a long moment. Then he flipped to a page in his own sketchbook, a drawing of a young boy under a bed, hands over his ears. "That was me," he said. "Long time ago. Different house. Same fear." Zuri looked at him with sudden understanding. Does it go away? The scared feeling? Abra gets smaller, Ghost said honestly. Especially when you've got people who make you feel safe. People who show up. People who don't make you hide. Reaper watched this exchange from a few feet away, pretending to check his bike but really marveling at how Ghost, who barely spoke to adults, was giving this child exactly what she needed. When Linda came home, she found them still drawing. Ghost had covered the sidewalk in chalk, flowers and stars and abstract designs that transformed concrete into canvas. Zuri had joined in, her smaller hands adding purple hearts everywhere. "We're making the sidewalk beautiful," Zuri announced. "Ghost says that's allowed." That beauty fights back against ugly things. Linda looked at these men, these rough, scarred, leather-wearing men, who were teaching her daughter that healing could look like art on sidewalks and safety could feel like motorcycle rides and family could be chosen rather than assigned by blood. "Thank you," she said, and meant it in ways that went deeper than words. That night, after Zuri was asleep, Linda sat at her small kitchen table and made a list. Resources Jasmine had given her, phone numbers for lawyers, shelters, counselors. A plan for if Marcus came back, a plan for moving forward. She was done hiding. Done making herself smaller so someone else could feel bigger. Done teaching her daughter that love meant accepting pain. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Safety plan meeting tomorrow, 2 p.m., community center. Bring Zuri if needed. We've got kids' activities. Tank A. Bruck." Another text followed from a different number. "Lawyer agreed to take your case. Restraining order hearing next week. Diesel then, Miss Dorothy says she's got a spare room if you need space while things settle. No pressure. Just options." Prophet Linda stared at her phone, tears blurring the screen. She'd spent 2 years believing she was alone, that no one cared, that screaming into the void was all she could do. She'd been wrong. Sometimes the void screamed back, sometimes it sent bikers. The call came at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. Reaper's phone shattered the silence of his small apartment above the garage. He answered before the second ring, already sitting up, already knowing that middle-of-the-night calls never brought good news. "He's here." Linda's voice was a whisper of controlled panic. "Marcus is outside the building. He's been out there for an hour, just watching. The police said they can't do anything unless he violates the restraining order by coming inside or making contact. Where's Zuri?" "Abra asleep. She doesn't know yet. Abra, keep her that way." Reaper was already pulling on his jeans, his boots. "I'm 10 minutes out. I'm calling the others." "Reaper, I don't want—" "Abra." "We're not going to hurt him, Linda. We're just going to make sure he remembers what consequences look like." 8 minutes later, 4 motorcycles rolled into the parking lot of Linda's apartment complex. Reaper, Prophet, Tank, and Diesel. They'd left Ghost in chains to keep the clubhouse running, and to have alibis if anyone asked questions later. Marcus Thompson Sr. stood near the building's entrance, swaying slightly, drunk or high or both. In his right hand, his phone glowed with the light of unanswered calls. He was staring up at the 3rd floor, at a window where a single light burned. Linda's window. The motorcycles cut their engines. The sudden silence was louder than the roar had been. Marcus turned, and in the streetlight, Reaper could see how the last 3 weeks had carved themselves into his face. Thinner, meaner. The look of a man who'd lost control and blamed everyone but himself. "You," Marcus spat the word. "You people ruined my life." "Abra, no," Prophet said calmly, dismounting his bike. "You did that yourself. We just stopped you from ruining theirs." "Abru," Marcus laughed, bitter and sharp. "That's my wife up there, my daughter, my family." "Not anymore," Reaper said. He walked forward slowly, hands visible, non-threatening but unmovable. "You gave up that right when you chose your fists over their safety. Brooke, you don't know what it's like." Marcus's voice cracked. "The pressure, the bills. Losing my job, everything falling apart. She didn't understand, she just kept asking for more." "Abra." "So you hit her," Tank said flatly. "That your solution? Make yourself feel big by making her feel small?" "Brr, I didn't mean—" "Ebrika, stop!" Diesel's voice cut through the night like a blade. "Stop making excuses. My old man used every excuse in the book. Money troubles, job stress, bad childhood. You know what it all meant." "Nothing. Because plenty of men have those problems and don't beat their families." Marcus's hand tightened around his phone. "I just want to see my daughter. Talk to Linda. Make things right. At 3 in the morning?" Prophet's eyebrow rose. "While you're intoxicated and violating a restraining order? That's not making things right. That's making things worse." I could go to the cops about you threatening me, Marcus said, desperation creeping into his voice. All of you. I know people. I could— Burkett could what? Reaper asked quietly. Tell them that 4 men on motorcycles stood in a public parking lot and had a conversation with you? There's no threat here, Marcus. Just truth. Broke Tank pulled out his phone, holding it up. And we're recording, like we did before, so everyone knows exactly what's being said and what's not. Bro, the fight drained from Marcus like air from a punctured tire. He stumbled back against the building's brick wall, sliding down until he sat on the cold ground. I lost everything, he whispered. Everything. Hebrew, no. Reaper crouched down, his voice surprisingly gentle. You lost the things you destroyed. Linda didn't leave because she stopped loving you. She left because she started loving herself and Zuri more. That's not loss. That's consequence. Marcus looked up, and for the first time there was something in his eyes besides anger. Something that might have been the beginning of awareness, or maybe just exhaustion. What am I supposed to do? He asked, and he sounded very young suddenly. Lost, Prophet spoke up. You're supposed to go home, wherever that is now. You're supposed to get help, real help, not just court-ordered sessions you're gonna skip. You're supposed to work on yourself until you're someone worthy of being in their lives again, if that day ever comes. And if I can't? Marcus's voice broke. If I can't be better? Brubby, then you love them enough to stay away, Diesel said. That's what real love does. It protects, even from itself. They stood there in the parking lot, 4 bikers and 1 broken man, while Chicago breathed around them. Somewhere a siren wailed, somewhere a train rattled past, somewhere life continued, indifferent to personal apocalypses. Finally, Marcus pulled himself to his feet. He looked up at Linda's window one more time, and something in his expression shifted. Acceptance, maybe. Or surrender. Tell her. He started, then stopped. No. Don't tell her anything. She doesn't need my words anymore. Brooke. He walked away, stumbling slightly, and disappeared into the night that had made him and would eventually either remake him or erase him entirely. Reaper pulled out his phone and texted Linda, He's gone. You're safe. The response came immediately. Did you hurt him? Hebrutha, no. Just talked. Made sure he understood. Hebruth, thank you. All of you. Hebruke. Reaper looked at his brothers. They were tired. It was late. They had jobs to get to in a few hours, responsibilities that wouldn't care about lost sleep. But they'd shown up anyway, because that's what you did when someone needed you. When a woman you barely knew called in the middle of the night because she was scared and alone. You showed up. Think he'll come back? Tank asked quietly. Maybe, Reaper admitted. Men like him, change doesn't come easy, usually doesn't come at all. Ibrahim then will be ready, Prophet said. For as long as it takes. They rode home as dawn started bleeding into the eastern sky, painting Chicago in shades of gold and promise. Behind them, Linda stood at her window watching them go, holding her sleeping daughter close. Zuri stirred. Mama? Shh! Baby, everything's okay now. I dreamed about the bikers. They were fighting dragons. Hebrahila smiled despite everything. Close enough, sweetheart, close enough. The next morning, Marcus Thompson Sr. checked himself into a rehabilitation facility 40 miles outside Chicago. Whether it was genuine change or strategic positioning for future custody battles, no one could say. But he went, and that was something. Linda didn't trust it, couldn't trust it, not yet, maybe not ever. But she documented it with her lawyer, added it to the file, built her case like building armor, one piece of evidence at a time, and every Wednesday and Friday Reaper picked Zuri up from school. And every first Thursday, Linda sat in a circle of women who understood. And every night she locked her doors and slept a little easier, knowing that if the worst came, she had numbers to call, people who'd answer. A network of unlikely angels who wore leather and rode motorcycles and had decided that her story wouldn't end the way theirs had. Spring arrived in Chicago like a promise kept, tentative at first, then bold. Trees along the south side streets budded green, children played outside without winter coats. The world felt like it was beginning again. For Linda Thompson, it felt like the first spring of her life. 3 months had passed since that night in the parking lot. 3 months of restraining orders and court dates and therapy sessions. 3 months of learning that healing wasn't linear. Some days she felt invincible. Other days, the sound of a door slamming sent her heart racing. But she was healing. And more importantly, so was Zuri, the little girl who'd once slept in closets now slept through the night. The child who'd flinched at raised voices now laughed freely. She was 7 years old and finally getting to act like it. Today was special. Reaper had invited them to the community center for what he'd called a thing. When Linda pressed for details, he'd just smiled mysteriously and said, "Trust me." For she did. That was still strange to realize. She trusted these men who society said she should fear, but they'd earned it in 1,000 small ways. Showing up, following through, never asking for anything except the chance to help. The community center's parking lot was full when they arrived. Not just motorcycles, but cars, too. Families. Linda recognized some faces from the support group. Sharon with her teenage son, Keisha, and her daughters. Miss Dorothy with her granddaughter. Inside, the main garage had been transformed. The greasy workbenches were covered with colorful tablecloths. Balloons floated near the ceiling. A banner stretched across the back wall. Community Strength Celebration Brr. But what caught Linda's eye was the corner where a small group of children gathered around Ghost. He was teaching them to draw, just like he'd taught Zuri. Each child had a canvas and paints, creating something beautiful from nothing. "What is all this?" Linda asked. Prophet appeared beside her, grinning. "We've been planning it for weeks. It's a celebration. For everyone who's come through the support group this year, everyone who made it out, who's still fighting, who chose themselves." Hebrew Tank emerged from the crowd carrying Zuri on his shoulders. She was laughing, holding a trophy. "Mama, look, I won the art contest. Ghost said my motorcycle with wings painting was the most imaginative." Linda's throat tightened. "Baby, that's wonderful!" Hebrew Reaper approached, and Linda noticed something different about him. He looked nervous. This man who'd faced down her violent ex-husband without flinching now looked like he was preparing for battle. "Ms. Thompson, Linda," he started. "There's something we wanted to do, something we've been working on." He led her to the center of the room where the other bikers stood. Behind them, a sheet covered something large. Prophet spoke first. "When we started this community center 5 years ago, it was just a garage, a place to fix bikes. But it became more. It became a place where people could fix themselves." Ebro Diesel continued, "We've helped a lot of families, but your family, you and Zuri, you reminded us why we do this, why it matters." Chains, usually quiet, added, "That little girl ran to us when she had nowhere else to go. She trusted us when the world taught her to fear us. That's sacred, man. That's a responsibility we don't take lightly." Tank wiped at his eyes, unashamed. "So we wanted to do something permanent." Ghost pulled the sheet away. Underneath was a mural, 8 feet tall, vibrant with color. It showed a little girl with purple beads in her hair, reaching up towards 6 figures. The figures were painted as shadows with stars inside them, like constellations of guardians. Around them swirled motorcycles with wings, flowers growing from concrete, and words written in flowing script. Abrake Courage IS asking for help. Strength IS showing up. Family IS chosen. Linda's hand flew to her mouth. Tears blurred her vision. "Ghost painted it," Reaper explained quietly. "With Zuri's help. She didn't know it was for you until now." Zuri climbed down from Tank's shoulders and ran to her mother. "Do you like it, Mama? Ghost said we could make art that tells our story. This is our story." Linda knelt down, pulling her daughter close. "It's perfect, baby. It's absolutely perfect." She looked up at the bikers. These men who'd saved her life, and then kept saving it in 100 small ways. Men who'd shown her daughter what real strength looked like. "I don't know how to thank you," she managed through tears. "You already did," Reaper said. "You let us help. You trusted us. You kept fighting. That's all the thanks we need." The celebration continued around them. Music played. Somebody had brought speakers and was playing a mix of old soul and modern R&B. Food appeared. A potluck where everyone contributed what they could. Miss Dorothy had made her famous mac and cheese. Sharon brought arroz con pollo. Keisha contributed a sweet potato pie that Tank eyed like treasure. Children ran between adults, laughing and safe. Women who'd spent years afraid in their own homes now danced in a converted garage that smelled like motor oil and hope. Jasmine Rodriguez, the social worker, cornered Linda near the food table. "I have news. Good news. Abrakelme," Linda said. "The judge granted your request. Full custody to you. Marcus gets supervised visitation only, contingent on completing his rehab program and 6 months of clean drug tests." Linda felt her knees weaken. Prophet, nearby, steadied her with a gentle hand. "It's over?" she whispered. "The legal part, mostly yes," Jasmine said carefully. "But Linda, you know recovery isn't just legal, it's emotional, mental. It'll take time." "I have time," Linda said, looking at Zuri, who was now painting with the other children. "And I have help. Finally." Aber. As the afternoon faded into evening, Reaper found himself standing outside, looking up at the sky. Prophet joined him, two old friends comfortable in silence. "You did good, Marcus," Prophet said, using his real name. "A rare thing." "We did good," Reaper corrected. "All of us. Think the kid will remember this? When she grows up?" Reaper smiled. "I think she'll remember that when she needed help, people showed up. That when the world felt dangerous, somebody made it safe. That's the kind of thing that shapes a life. Ibra, like your mama's situation shaped yours." Reaper nodded slowly. "Yeah. But Zuri's story has a different ending. That matters. That changes things." Inside, Linda stood before the mural, reading the words again. "Family Ice chosen?" She thought about the family she'd been born into, loving but distant, unable to understand why she'd stayed with Marcus so long. She thought about the family she'd married into, Marcus's relatives who'd blamed her, defended him, made excuses. And then she thought about this family, this chosen family of broken people who'd learned to fix each other, bikers and social workers, single mothers and children learning to heal, strangers who'd become sisters. This was family. Not perfect, not without scars, but real, present, showing up. Zuri tugged on her hand. "Mama, can we come back here every week?" Linda looked at her daughter, this brave, resilient, beautiful child who'd saved them both by running toward help instead of away from it. "Yeah, baby," Linda said. "Every week. This is our place now. These are our people." And for the first time in years, that word, our, felt like hope instead of ownership, like belonging instead of possession, like the beginning of something that couldn't be broken by fists or fear. 1 year later, Zuri Thompson stood on stage at Lincoln Elementary School's talent show, 8 years old now, wearing a dress with purple accents that matched the beads in her hair. In her hands, she held a poster board covered with drawings. In the front row sat her mother, healthy and whole. Next to Linda sat 6 men in leather vests who'd cleaned up nice. Jeans instead of riding gear, but still unmistakably themselves. "My project is called What Heroes Look Like," Zuri began, her voice steady and clear. "A year ago, I learned something important. I learned that heroes don't always look like the people in movies." She flipped to her first drawing, a little girl running toward motorcycles. "When I was 7, something bad was happening in my house. My mama was getting hurt and I was scared. I ran outside looking for help and I found these men." She pointed to the bikers in the audience. Several parents turned to look, some with recognition, others with curiosity. People crossed the street when they saw them, but I ran to them, and they saved my mama's life. Linda wiped at her eyes. Reaper sat perfectly still, his jaw tight with emotion. Zuri continued, showing drawing after drawing. Ghost teaching her to paint. Tank giving her rides on his shoulders. Prophet helping her with homework. Diesel showing her how to change a tire. Chains teaching her about motorcycle engines. Reaper picking her up from school every Wednesday and Friday. "My teacher says we should judge people by their character, not how they look. These men taught me that. They showed up when nobody else would. They answered when I called for help. They protected my mama and me, and they never asked for anything back." She held up her final drawing, the mural from the community center, recreated in her 8-year-old hand. "This is at their community center. It's a place where people who are hurting can come and be safe, where kids can learn art and how to fix things, where mamas like mine can talk to other mamas and not feel alone." Her voice grew stronger. "My project is about heroes, real heroes. Not the ones on TV, but the ones who show up at 3 in the morning, who answer calls from scared kids, who teach you that being strong means being kind, who prove that family isn't just blood, it's choice." The auditorium was silent. Even the fidgety kindergartners had stopped squirming. "So when people ask me what heroes look like," Zuri finished, "I show them this." She pointed at the bikers. "Heroes look like people who care, who show up, who turn their own hurt into help for others." Thank you for listening. The applause started slowly, then built into something thunderous. Parents stood. Teachers wiped their eyes. The principal, who'd initially questioned whether this topic was appropriate, was openly crying. Zuri walked off stage and straight into her mother's arms. Then the bikers surrounded them, a protective circle of leather and love. "You did good, little sister," Reaper said softly. "Real good." After the talent show, everyone gathered in the school parking lot. Other parents approached, some sheepish, some curious. A mother named Patricia walked up to Linda. I owe you an apology," Patricia said. "I saw these men picking up Zuri. I almost called the school, made assumptions. I'm sorry." Linda smiled. "You're not the first. Won't be the last. But maybe now you'll think twice before judging." "I will," Patricia promised. Then, quieter, "And if you ever have information about that support group your daughter mentioned, I have a friend who might need it." Linda handed her a card. One she'd had printed with the community center's information. She'd given out dozens in the past year, each one a lifeline thrown to someone drowning. "First Thursday of every month," Linda said. "Tell your friend the coffee's terrible, but the people are real." Patricia took the card like it was precious. "Thank you." That evening, the whole group gathered at the community center for what had become their tradition, Friday night dinner, a potluck where everyone contributed, where children did homework at one table while adults talked at another, where healing happened slowly but surely. Marcus Thompson Sr. was not there. He'd completed rehab, but the supervised visits with Zuri were brief and awkward. He was trying, truly trying, his counselor said, but some bridges, once burned, took years to rebuild, maybe lifetimes. Zuri seemed okay with it. She'd told her therapist that she hoped her father got better, but she didn't need him to be happy anymore. She had her mama. She had her chosen family. That was enough. Tonight, Ghost unveiled a new mural, the second one for the community center. This one showed hands of different colors reaching toward each other, forming a chain that became a heart. Words painted above, "We save each other." Mat, a brew. "It's the truth," Ghost said simply. "You saved me much as I saved you. That's how this works." Abru Tank raised his glass of sweet tea. "To broken people fixing each other, to choosing family," Prophet added. "To showing up," Diesel said. "To little girls brave enough to ask for help," Chains contributed. "To mothers strong enough to leave," Reaper finished. They drank, and the sound of laughter filled the garage that had become a sanctuary. Linda watched her daughter playing with the other children, roughhousing with Tank, showing off her latest drawings to Ghost, helping Chains organize his tools. This child, who'd once hidden in closets, now ran free and fearless. "You thinking about how far you've come?" Reaper asked, appearing beside her. "Every day," Linda admitted. "Some days I still can't believe this is my life now, that we're safe, happy. Ibruf, you made that happen. You chose to leave, to fight, to build something new. Brooker, I couldn't have done it without you, without all of you." Hibruka Reaper shook his head. "You could have. It would have been harder, but you would have found a way. That's who you are, Linda. Survivor, fighter, mother, strong." She turned to look at him. This man who'd been a stranger a year ago, who was now one of her closest friends. "What about you? You ever think about your own healing, your own story?" "Ebru," he was quiet for a moment. "Every time I help someone else, I help that 15-year-old kid who couldn't save his mama. Every time a woman walks into our support group, I give my mother the help she never got. This is my healing. All of this." Linda understood. They all carried ghosts. The difference was whether you let those ghosts haunt you or whether you turned them into angels that pushed you toward better. As the evening wound down, Zuri climbed onto Reaper's lap. Something she did sometimes, treating all the bikers like the uncles they'd become. "Reaper," she asked sleepily, "when I grow up, can I be like you?" "Little sister, you're already better than me. You're going to be whoever you want to be." Brookie, "I want to help people, like you do, like Mama does, like Ghost and Tank and all of them." "Ibra, then you will," he said simply, "because you already know the most important thing." "Ibrefi, what's that?" "Fibri, that everybody deserves somebody to show up for them. Everybody deserves to be saved." Zuri nodded against his chest, her eyes drifting closed. "Even the people nobody else wants to help, Ibra, especially them." Linda came to collect her sleeping daughter. As she lifted Zuri, the little girl mumbled, "Love you, Reaper. Love you, Mama. Love everybody. We love you too, baby, Linda whispered. She carried Zuri to the car, Reaper walking beside them. The Chicago night was clear, stars visible despite the city lights. A rare gift. You know what I realized? Linda said. That night when Zuri ran to you. She didn't just save me, she saved all of us. Gave us all a reason to be better. Reaper helped buckle Zuri into her car seat. Kids have a way of doing that. Seeing past the surface. Trusting their instincts. Abr. She trusted you when logic said she shouldn't. When everything she'd been taught said bikers were dangerous. Ibra, maybe she saw something everyone else missed. That dangerous and protective can wear the same face. That the people society throws away sometimes become the people who save it. Hebruk Linda got into the driver's seat. Through the window she looked her one last time. Thank you. For answering a little girl's cry for help. For being the man who showed up. For all of it. Abra, thank you, Reaper replied. For letting us. For trusting us. For giving us a chance to be more than what the world expected. She drove away, and Reaper watched until the taillights disappeared. Then he turned back to the community center where his brothers were cleaning up, where next week another woman would walk through those doors looking for hope, where healing happened one broken person at a time. He thought about his mother, about how she'd needed someone to show up, and nobody had. About how that failure had driven him to become the man who would always answer. Always show up. Always fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves. Prophet joined him outside. You good? Ibrafa, yeah, Reaper said. I'm good. We're all good. And for the first time in 30 years, he meant it. Above them, the Chicago stars shone like promises kept. Inside, the mural glowed under fluorescent lights, a permanent reminder that heroes wore many faces. That salvation came from unexpected places. That the measure of a person wasn't their past or their appearance, but their willingness to stand between the innocent and the darkness. That day, and every day after, Marcus Reaper Johnson and his brothers didn't fight for revenge. They stood for truth. And in a little girl's drawings, in a mother's healing heart, in a community center that smelled like motor oil and redemption, they found the only payment they'd ever wanted. They found purpose. They found family. They found that saving others was the only way to save themselves. That day, they didn't fight for revenge. They stood for truth.